So we're going to go over the polynomial review. First off, let's look at just the rules. So if the exponent is 1, then it will cross. If the exponent's odd, it will, but not 1, it will wiggle. If it's even, it will bounce. So on the ends, if it's positive and odd, the ends look like this. Negative, the leading coefficient is negative, and the degree is odd. The ends will look like that. We'll go left down, right up. If it's even and positive, both are going up. If it's negative and even, they're both going down. So let's work through a couple of these. So when we're looking at these, we need to first find which section goes with which part. And so the 7x to the second equals 0. When we solve it, I need the square root of both sides, we end up with that being 0. So this is going off of the 0 here. And so at that point, 2 is a bounce. Now let's look at the next section. X minus 1 to the 4th power equals 0. Take the 4th root of both sides, and we end up with it not much changing. Then we add the 1. And so for the x equals 1, the exponent I'm looking at is a 4. 4 is even, so it's a bounce. So let's look at the next section. X plus 1 to the 5th is equal to 0. Take the 5th root of both sides. Subtract the 1. So x is equal to negative 1. And so the exponent there is a 5. The 5 is odd, so it's a wiggle. Now, the sign of the leading coefficient. So you're looking at this number here. It is positive. So the sign leading coefficient is positive. The right-hand side will always match that, so it's going to go to positive infinity. The degree comes from adding up all of these guys. So 5 plus 2 is 7, plus 4 gives me the 11th. And so, because this is odd, the left is going to be opposite to the right. Because that's odd, this is opposite. So let's go ahead and do the next one. We're going to go through the same process. So negative 5x equals 0. X therefore is 0. At that point, the exponent was 1. Ones are crosses based upon our rules. X plus 1 to the 7th power equals 0. Take the 7th root of both sides and we end up with 0. We subtract the 1 from both sides. And so x equals negative 1. So in that column, my exponent was 7. 7 is odd but not 1, so it's a wiggle. And our last one is x minus 1, all raised to the 4th power, equals 0. X minus 1 is, when we do the 4th root of that, is equal to 0. We add 1 to both sides. And so the exponent there is 4. It is even, so it's a bounce. our leading coefficient is -5. So our sine of our leading coefficient is negative. That automatically makes my right-hand side go to -infinity because it always matches. Now I need to find my degree by adding up all my exponents. 8 plus 4 is 12. Because it's even, they're going to match. So I'm going to -infinity. Number 3. Four x to the fourth is, or second, is equal to 0. So divide by 4. Take the square root. So there, my exponent was 2. 2 is even, so therefore a bounce. Now I'm going to take that x plus 1 all raised to the 8th power. Is that equal to 0? And so when I take the 8th root of that, I end up with 0 still. Subtract the 1. So in this section, my exponent was an 8, therefore a bounce. Well, I don't have anything else to set equal to 0, so that means there isn't anything for that x plus 1. So it's not applicable, it's none. So now, we're going to take our leading coefficient, which is 4, and our sine of our leading coefficient is negative, or is positive, excuse me. The right-hand side always matches. It's going to go to positive infinity. And then we add our exponents, so 10. It's even, so that means I'm going to match. So y is going to positive infinity on the left-hand side as well. So the fourth one on this is the last section on this one. -6x to the 7th is equal to 0. Divide both sides by 6, and we get 0, and take the 7th root of 0, and you still end up at 0. So the exponent is 7. 7 is odd, but not 1, so I'm a wiggle. Then I'm going to take the x minus 1 and set equal to 0. So x is equal to positive 1. And my exponent is understood to be a 1 if nothing is written. And so therefore it's a cross. And I'm going to take my last one, x plus 10. Or excuse me, x plus 1 raised to the 10th power is equal to 0. Take the 10th root of both sides. And then move the 1 over. So my exponent was a 10, which is even, so it's a bounce. And so I'm going to look at my leading coefficient. That -6 is negative. So my sine of my leading coefficient is negative. My right-hand side is going to match. I find the degree by adding up all my exponents. So 8 plus 10 is 18th. And so because it's even, they are going to match. And so y is equal to -infinity. So again, right-hand side matches your leading coefficient. If it's even, they're both going to be the same. If it's odd, they're going to be opposite. So this time we're trying to go from the graph and the exponent information to create the equation. So let's go ahead and fill in what we know. If it's a fifth is the power of the exponent, that means it's odd but not 1, so it's a wiggle. If 1 is the power of the exponent, it's a cross, and if it's 8, that's even, so it's a bounce. So the graph is going to tell us our end behavior. So left-hand side is going to positive infinity. Right-hand side is going to positive infinity. The leading coefficient is based upon that sign. And so that is positive. And then we're going to add all my exponents. And that gives us 9 plus 5, which is 14. And since that's even, that matches up to what we said it was going to be. So now let's write our function. So I have to figure out what would the factor look like. So I'm basically going up and trying to create the factor. So I would need to add the 1 to both sides. And so x plus 1 is my factor here. This will just be x. Subtract that 1. So x minus 1 is my factor here. My leading coefficient, we said was going to be positive, so I just need to come up with any positive number. So positive 5. It really doesn't matter the number. Next thing I'm going to write is the one with the 0. So the x, and then my exponent was 1. I don't have to write that 1. It's understood to be there. And then I'm just going to go from left to right. X plus 1. We said the exponent was 5. X minus 1. The exponent was 8. Going on to the next one. And so let's look at it. Exponent of 9 tells me that it's a wiggle. Exponent of 1 tells me it's a cross. Exponent of 7 tells me it's a wiggle. And let's fill in our tails and which direction they're going. So left-hand side was approaching negative infinity. Right-hand side was approaching positive infinity. Since that's positive, the leading coefficient is positive. My degree is we add these up. And so that becomes 17th. This being odd is shown up here because these are going to be opposite. So let's write our function. And remember we said this is going to be plus 1. This was just x. And this was minus 1. If you need to see how I did that, go back to the previous one. And so I need to come up with any positive number. 6. X to the first. Do I need to write the 1? No. X plus 1. The exponent on that we said was 9. X minus 1 to the 7th. So let's go ahead and do this next one. So my left-hand side is going to positive infinity. My right-hand side is going to negative infinity. That means my leading coefficient is going to have to be negative because my right-hand side is negative infinity. And then my degree, I add those up. 12 plus 3 is 15. Oh, and I forgot to identify. 4 is even, so therefore it's a bounce. 8 is even, therefore it's a bounce. 3 is odd, but not 1, so therefore it's a wiggle. And if you need to go back to number 5 and look at it, I'll go through how you can get this factors, but this is the x plus 1 factor, this is the x factor, and this is the x minus 1 factor. So we said it needs to be negative leading coefficient, so any negative number, negative 8. X, and x had the exponent of 8. X plus 1 had the exponent of 4. X minus 1 had the exponent of 3. Last one of these. So a 6 is even, so a bounce. A 2 is even, so a bounce. And is not applicable. There is no exponent, so that means that it's none. So that means we're not going to have that factor show up. Left-hand side is going to negative, y is approaching negative infinity. Right-hand side, y is approaching negative infinity. So we match it going over. And my degree is when I add up all my exponents. So 6 plus 2 is 8. And so let's go ahead and write our function. Remembering x minus 1 was the factor of x plus 1. X equals 0 is 0, or it's just x. So my leading coefficient is negative. I just need to choose any negative number. So I'm going to choose negative 5. X to the second. And x plus 1 had the power of 6 for the exponent. That's it of those where you're doing it from the graph and coming up with the equation. Now let's look and see if it's a general form. I need to find out, using Descartes' rule of signs, a possible positive, negative, and imaginary roots. So for positive roots, first make sure it's all in order, and once it is, you identify your groups of signs. And then you identify your sign changes. So I had one sign change. So my possible positive roots is 1, and I count down by 2. So for the negative roots, we're going to plug it in a negative x, and that's going to make anything with an odd exponent change its sign. So negative 5x to the 5th plus 2x to the 4th minus 8x cubed plus 15x squared plus 8x minus 3. Now I'm looking to see where my groups of signs are. So 1, and then I change to positive, and then I change back to negative, then I change back to positive, and I stay there, and then I change again. So I need to count my sign changes. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I start at 4 and I count down by 2. So next number is 2 and the next number is 0. Imaginary, I look at my highest power. So my highest power is 5. That's odd, so I need to go down to 4 because I have to have an even number for imaginary. And then 2, and then 0. So let's do 3 more of those. So start off with it being the positive. I start with being those 2 positive, and I go to negative. So I just have one sign change. Now I'm going to plug in which is going to change all my odd exponents. So negative 9x to the 5th a is 16x cubed minus plus 16x. And so when I'm looking at sign changes, I go from negative to positive, so I have one sign change. So 1. So now let's look at the imaginary roots. And so when we look at the imaginary roots, we look at our highest power. And our highest power is a 5. And so since that is odd, then we are going to have to go down to 4 and then count down by 2's. So let's start over with this next one on Descartes' rule of signs. So we're grouping our sections by the sign. Now I have 1, 2 changes in the original. So 2, and I count down by 2's. Next, I'm going to take and plug in that negative x, which is going to change anything with an odd exponent. So in this case, it only changes one thing. 9x to the 6th plus 7x cubed minus 16x squared plus 48. And so my possible negative roots, I need to group it by sign. And I have 1, 2 changes. So 2, 0. Now for my imaginary, I look at my highest power, so 6 in this case. It's even, so I get to start at 6. So 6, 4, 2, 0. The next question on Descartes' rule of signs, again, I'm grouping it by signs. And every single one had a different sign from the previous. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sign changes for the original. And we count down by 2's. Now I'm going to plug in that negative x, which changes all my odd exponents' signs. When I look at the sign changes, it's all the consistent sign. So there was no change from the previous on any of that. So the possible negative roots is 0. Now I'll look at my highest power, which is 4. It's even, so I stay at 4. So I start at 4, 2, 0. And so those are my Descartes' rule of signs problems. The next section where we're talking about is with the division. So when we're dividing, and on these, the entire instructions are going to be write the remainder in fraction form. So let's look at it and fill in. First off, do I decrease by 1 on each of my powers? Yes. Are they in order? Yes. And so now I'm going to fill into the chart. Excuse me. Your highest power goes first. Then we're going to try to create the pattern. And so to go up, you will divide. To go down, you multiply. So we're going to divide to go up, and that gives me x squared. And so when I look at x squared, I'm going to multiply that times the negative 4, which gives me negative 4x squared. Now, I need to complete. I look up here at the top, and I need to get to a positive 6x squared. So what do I need to add? I need to add a 10x squared. So I will divide to go up. So When I divide to go up, I get 10x squared, 10x. I multiply to go down, I get negative 40x. So I'm looking to complete it. 40x, negative 40x plus something is equal to negative 43x. I need a 3x to complete that. And so for my next one, I divide to go up, negative 3, multiply to go down, gives me a positive 12. 12 plus something is going to give me 8. And so I need to subtract out 4. And since my previous one did not have a variable, this is my remainder column. And so now we're ready for my answer. X squared plus 10x minus 3. My remainder was negative, so I can put a minus sign. And that's 4 over x minus 4. Let's look at this next one. This next one, I look at my numbers and I go down by 1 on all my exponents for when I'm dividing, but my dividend does not, so I need to take and put a plus 0x in there. So x squared, 0x, negative 5. 4x squared goes here. Again, just like we did before, to go up, you divide. To go down, you multiply. So I divide to go up, and that gives me just, oops, that's 4x cubed here. So when I divide to go up, that gives me 4x. And I multiply to go down, gives me 20. X at the bottom, and a 0x squared in the middle. So now, we need to complete the diagonal. 0x squared plus something is going to get me to that 3x squared. That something is 3x squared. So again, we're going to divide to go up. So 3x squared divided by x squared gives me just a positive 3, and multiply to come down. And so looking at my negative 20x plus 0x, and I want that to get me to a negative 20x. So I need to add 0x. So I don't have to write that when I'm looking at my remainder. Next one, I have that negative 15 plus something is equal to a negative 46. Well, I need to add a negative 31 to get there. So my answer is 4x plus 3. That was a negative 31, so I write negative 31, the negative sign, or minus sign, and then 31 over x squared minus 5. And that's my answer. So let's look at this next one. Oh, this one's all out of order, so I need to rewrite it in order. X cubed plus x squared minus 62x minus 41 is what I'm dividing. I'm dividing that by x plus 8. That's already in order. So x plus 8 goes here. My highest x power is cubed. I divide to go up, multiply to come down, add to complete the diagonal. And this is equal to x squared. And we've got to remember that's a 1x squared. I saw a lot of people having troubles and trying to get this to be 0. It's not 0 there. Remember, it's just 1. So negative 7x squared will get us there. So if it helps you on the test, go ahead and write that 1. So we're going to divide to go up. So negative 7x squared divided by x gives me negative 7x. Multiply to come down. So negative 56x plus something is going to equal negative 62x. That something is negative 6x. And so I divide to go up, and I get negative 6. Multiply to come down gives me negative 48. Negative 48 plus something is equal to negative 41. Well, that something is going to be a positive 7. And since this one didn't have a variable, the negative 6 didn't have a variable, that means we're now at the remainder. And so I'll write my answer. X squared minus 7x minus 6. That 7 was positive, so I'm going to put plus 7 divided by x plus 8. The next question we had is my number 16. And so r's, they're in order. So r cubed goes here. R minus 3 goes here. We're going to divide to go up. And so r cubed divided by r gives me r squared. Multiply to come down. That gives me negative 3r squared. Negative 3r squared plus something equals 6r squared. And so to get there, I need to add 9r squared. I need to divide to go up. So that gives me 9r, and it was positive. Multiply to come down, negative 27r. So negative 27r plus something is equal to negative 22r. Well, that something is a positive 5. Divide to go up. Multiply to come down. And since this is the last one doesn't have the variable, we're in our remainder column. So negative 15 plus something is equal to negative 22. And that something is going to have to be a negative 7. So now let's write our answer. R squared plus 9r plus 5. That's a negative 7, so it's going to be minus 7 divided by r minus 3. Number 17. My variables are all in order, and there's nothing missing. So I'm just going to go ahead and go straight into the problem. N cubed divided by n gives me n squared. I multiply to come down. And so 4n squared plus something is equal to 9n squared. That something is 5n squared. And again, to go up, I need to divide. To come down, I multiply. And so divide going up. 5n squared divided by n gives me 5n. Multiply coming down, 20n plus something is equal to 15n. That something is going to have to be a negative 5n. Divide to go up, negative 5, negative 5. Multiply to come down gives me a negative 20 plus something is equal to negative 24. Since that negative 5 did not have a variable with it, that means I'm in my remainder. And I need a negative 4 more to get to the negative 24. So my answer is n squared plus 5n minus 5 minus 4 over n plus 4. $18. My variables go down. 7x squared, x cubed. And I've got to divide that by x plus 9. So when I divide, I get 7x squared. Multiply to come down, and that gives me 63x squared. 63x squared plus something is equal to 54x squared. Well, that something is a negative 9x squared. You divide to go up, and you get negative 9x. Multiply to come down, you get negative 81x. Negative 81x plus something is equal to negative 79x. And so get smaller negative, or get closer to the positive, I need to add 2x. Divide to go up, and I get a positive 2. No more variables, so that means the next column is going to be my remainder. 18, when I multiply to come down, plus something is equal to 28. That something is going to have to be 10. So my answer is 7x squared minus 9x plus 2. The remainder is positive, so I put a plus sign. X plus 9 is my denominator, and 10 is my numerator. So for this next set, we still have everything in order, but this time we have a bigger number what we're dividing by. So we have 10k minus 4. So we have 90k squared. 90 divided by 10 gives me 9. K to the 4th divided by k gives me k cubed. Multiply to come down, we get negative 36k cubed. Negative 36k cubed plus something is going to give me a negative 106k cubed. And so what I need to add there is I need to add a negative 70k cubed. So I divide to go up, and that gives me a negative 7k squared. Multiply to come down, that gives me a positive 28k squared. So 28k squared plus something is going to give me negative 42k squared. Again, I'm matching these up from the top. And so what I need to take away from there is a negative 70k squared. So I divide to go up, and I get negative 7k. Multiply to come down, get a positive 28k. So 28k plus something is equal to 108k Well, that something is 80K. And then I divide to go up, and I get 8. Multiply to come down, I get negative 32. Negative 32 plus something is equal to negative 36. Well, that something is a negative 4. And since I no longer have any variables in the previous column, that means I'm in my remainder. So my answer is 9K cubed minus 7K squared minus 7K plus 8. My remainder is negative. And I had a 4 over 10K minus 4. And that's my answer. This one was up a little bit higher because I started a little bit high with a higher variable. So let's go ahead and do this next one. They are still in order and there is nothing skipped. So 5x to the 4th. And I'm dividing that by 5x minus 10. So when I divide to go up, I get 1x cubed. Multiply to come down gives me negative 10x cubed. Negative 10x cubed plus something equals a positive 10x cubed. So I need to add 20x cubed. When I divide to go up, 20 divided by 5 is 4. X cubed divided by x gives me x squared. Multiply to come down, negative 40x squared plus something is equal to negative 90x squared. And so that's going to be a negative 50x squared. I divide to go up, and that gives me a positive 10x. Multiply to come down, or excuse me, a negative 10x. Multiply to come down, that gives me 110x. And then add to get the diagonal. Positive 110x, excuse me, I cannot. 100x there. Plus something is going to equal to negative 110. And so that something is a negative 10x. And so when I complete the diagonal, I have divide to go up. I get negative 2. Multiply to come down, I get a positive. Excuse me, that was a positive 10. I get a positive 2, so coming down I get negative 20. Negative 20 plus something is equal to negative 20. And that something happens to be a 0. So that means this was a factor. And so my final answer is x to the 3rd plus 4x squared minus 10x plus 2. So question 21. These are out of order. So the first step you need to do is rewrite it into the correct order. And so we look and see what is our highest power, and the highest power is v to the 4th. So that goes first. And then we have v cubed. Then we have our v squared. Then we have our v. Then we have our constant. And then we're going to divide that by 2v plus 8, because you have to have that in the right order as well. And so 2v to the 4th, we divide and we end up with v cubed. Multiply down, 8v cubed. So I need to take 8v cubed plus something to get to negative 8v cubed. And so I need to subtract out 16v cubed. Now I divide to go up and I get negative 8v squared. Multiply coming down, I get negative 64v squared. So negative 64v squared plus something is equal to negative 66v squared. So I end up with negative 2v squared. And I divide to go up. Negative 2 divided by 2 is going to give me negative 1. And then v squared divided by v gives me v. Multiply coming down gives me negative 8v. So negative 8v plus something is equal to negative 28v. So negative 20v is what it is. And then I look at going up. And so divide to go up gives me negative 10. Multiply coming down gives me negative 80. So negative 80 plus something is going to give me negative 71. That something is a positive 9. Since that previous column did not have a variable, that means I'm in my remainder. And so my answer is v cubed minus 8v squared minus v minus 10. The remainder was positive, so plus 9 divided by 2v plus 8. Okay, so in this next one, the instructions are slightly different. What I've asked you for is the given binomial a factor of the polynomial? So first you need to take and divide. And you're going to do that the same way we've been doing. Make sure that your powers go down in order and make sure you're not skipping anything. So x cubed divided by x gives me x squared. Multiply to come down gives me negative 9x squared. So negative 9x squared plus something equals negative 16x squared. And so what I need to add in there is a negative 7x squared. Now I'm going to divide to go up. And I multiply to come down. And so when I multiply to come down, I get a positive 63x. So 63x plus something is equal to 55x. That something needs to be a negative. And I need to subtract out 8x. So negative 8x. And so I'm going to divide to go up. That gives me negative 8. And then I multiply trying to come down. I get 72. So 72 plus something is equal to 67. And so I need to subtract out 5. So my remainder is equal to negative 5. Because my remainder is equal to negative 5, that means this is not a factor. If you have any remainder, if it's negative 5, it's of a million, if it's 3, whatever number, if it's not 0, it is not a factor. So for this next one, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look at it and we're going to see, okay, they don't skip any, they go down in order, so I'm going to go ahead and fill it in my chart. X minus 4 goes on the outside. You divide to go up, and you multiply to come down. And we're doing the same instructions, so we're trying to see if the binomial is a factor of the polynomial. So that means we need to see what our remainder is. And so x squared when we divide Multiply, we get negative 4x squared. So negative 4x squared plus something is equal to negative 13x squared. That something is a negative 9x squared. I divide to go up and I get negative 9x. Multiply coming down, I get 36x. 36x plus something is equal to 27x. And so that something is a negative 9x. You divide to go up. It gives you a positive 36. When we multiply to come down? 36 plus something is equal to 36. Well, that something is 0. And so since my remainder is 0, so my remainder is equal to 0, therefore it is a factor. Oh, writing is and factor at the same time. So yes, it is a factor.